So good morning, all of you. It's my pleasure to welcome you here at COP29, the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub Dialogue. My name is Nitin Arora. I'm the project manager of UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub. UGIH is a specialized project of mitigation division of the Secretariat of UNFCCC, which was launched at COP26 in Glasgow. Mr. Masamba Thioe, he's the lead of this project. COP29 Dialogue of UGIH is a set of events. So we'll be organizing 45 events, mostly in this room, Bhuta, in the next 2 weeks. Last year at COP28 in Dubai, we organized 85 sessions on different thematic areas, including technological solutions, financial instruments, innovation in the policy instruments, and we are hoping to have a very successful COP29 dialogue. This first session is a high-level session on innovation for climate and sustainability actions and the role of inner development and system change. I would now like to invite Mr. Masamba Thioe to open this dialogue and give the welcoming remarks. So Masamba, you have the floor.
Thank you, Nitin, and good morning to all of you. I'm really very pleased to welcome you to this COP29 dialogue of the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub. The Global Innovation Hub is an initiative of the UNFCCC Secretariat launched at COP26 with a one-fold vision. How can we contribute in providing to the many people, nobody being left behind, flourishing life, while keeping human activities within the planetary boundaries? This is a very challenging undertaking. This is nothing less than reinventing our industry, reinventing our economy, reinventing our societies, but also reinventing ourselves. To reinvent our society, we will need to have a new systemic innovation framework that is human-centric, vision-driven, need-based, transformative, and collaborative. Indeed, system change is the structural reconfiguration needed for reinventing our society. And the reinvention of our society provides the vision and the values that are needed to drive and shape the system change that is needed. We need also to have a metacognitive reframing framework to reinvent ourselves. This metacognitive reframing framework will challenge the way we are thinking, challenge the way we are acting, and challenge the way we are interacting, and will contribute in promoting 3 important aspects of inner development: caring, sharing, and daring. These 3 aspects of inner development are so important for us that they are now the core value of the Global Innovation Hub. Caring is important because it drives motivation, it fosters collaboration, and it inspires action. Sharing is about being able to give generously, being able to receive gracefully, and being able to collaborate genuinely. And daring is about being able to think big, having the audacity to dream big, but also having the tenacity to persevere in the face of challenge, and the resilience to bounce back even stronger in case of failure, because probably we will also face failure. So these two epoch transformative change, which are at the macro level, the reinvention of our society, and at the micro level, the reinvention of ourselves, need to be done in an integrated manner. I'm really pleased that we have started our dialogue this year with such an important theme, the connection between innovation, climate and sustainability action, inner development, and system change. Who better than Kirsten would be able to moderate such important topic? I would like to thank her and also thank our keynote speaker that will speak right after us, and all our panelists for accepting to join us today in this very important dialogue. Back to you.
Thank you, Masaba. I would now like to invite Mr. Ciyong Zhao, who is the Deputy to the Director General of UNIDO, to make the keynote remarks. Mr. Zhao.
Thank you, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to welcome you to this roundtable on transforming industry for the climate resilient 1.5 degree pathways, organized by the Global Innovation Lab. Our discussion today takes place against a backdrop of record-breaking global temperatures, severe floods, and droughts. All of this highlights the urgent need for action. We are at a critical juncture where the industrial sector must shift its practices to meet the present goals set forth in the Paris Agreement. UNIDO is committed to accelerate this shift by supporting its 173 member states in their efforts to make industrial processes more sustainable and resilient. As the United Nations agency dedicated to advancing inclusive and sustainable industrial development, our focus is clear: decarbonizing industry to meet the 1.5 degree target and helping countries navigate the transition toward greener, more climate resilient economies. The industrial sector, a major contributor to emissions, holds tremendous potential as a driver of sustainable change. Today's event offers us a valuable opportunity to assess our progress, exchange insights, and sharpen our strategies for transformative industrial change. Our approach is built around practical solutions by promoting green innovations in energy, materials, and production processes. We empower industries to adopt practices that reduce emissions and strengthen resilience. UNIDO's partnerships for technology transfer ensure that all nations, regardless of economic status, have the tools needed to make climate-smart decisions. Moreover, enhancing access to climate finance, especially for developing economies, remains a priority to support this change on a global scale. The scale of transformation required to align industry with the 1.5 degree target is significant. It demands a unified effort involving government, financial institutions, international organizations, the private sector, and the civil society. Only through shared responsibility and collaboration can we meet our climate commitment while building resilient economies that create green jobs, boost community well-being, and contribute to long-term stability. COP29 provides a crucial platform to turn these commitments into action. We are encouraged by the steps being taken here in Baku and by the focus on securing climate finance and driven forward an ambitious action agenda of the COP29 presidency. UNIDO is committed to contributing to the initiatives on energy storage, green energy corridors, and hydrogen by advancing sustainable industrial practices that align with the broader climate agenda. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, let us collaborate to reshape industry into a force for good with the spirit of caring, sharing, and daring. I look forward to hearing your insights and working together toward a sustainable future where industry plays a key role in achieving our climate goals. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zhao. I would now like to invite Ms. Kirsten Dunlop, who is the CEO of Climate Cake, and other panelists for this particular session to come up on the podium and have the discussion. Kirsten.
Now working? Okay. Thank you very much. Maybe let's just take hello, good morning. Let's just take the seats in the middle. Maybe one person on this. Yeah, wonderful. Fantastic. Bernhard, in the middle there? Yeah. In the middle, I think it would be better if we're a little bit closer together. So good morning, each one of you. Good morning, everybody. Everything? Do we need a timer? No, I think we can manage. Thank you. I'll make sure that I am diligent about timing. Okay, now I think we also have on screen, online, joining us from Europe, Johan Rockström. So let's just check that we can bring Johan in as well.
Hello, Kirsten. I can see and hear you. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you. That's wonderful. We can't yet see you, but with any luck, that will happen. There we go. Is it possible to pin? Perfect. Thank you very much. Hi, Johan.
Yes, hello there. Good to see you.
So we have a number of questions this morning, very much building on the framing that Masamba has provided and Mr. Zhao, to dig into some of the more complex, entangled opportunity spaces and transformative tipping points that we really need to address and that seem very appropriate to be opening COP29 in the context of what has happened in the world last week. So I'm going to ask each of you a question. As you answer this first question, would you mind just very briefly introducing yourself so that you bring your own sense of self into the conversation? And Johan, I'm going to ask you to answer first. And the question I would like to put to you has to do with setting a scene. I think it's always important to just start with setting a scene. This decade has been dubbed the most decisive decade for action on climate. I would really appreciate your couple of reflections on where exactly we stand and what you think needs to be done to preserve Earth's resilience to human pressure. And just as a small reminder, if you could very briefly introduce yourself first, Johan.
Yes, thanks, Kirsten, and hello, Masamba, dear colleagues, friends. So yes, my name is Johan Rockström. I'm a professor in Earth System Science and sitting in my office here at the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research in Germany. And yes, we scientifically define this decade as the defining decades for humanity's future on Earth already at the millennium. So when we entered in 2020, why? Because we had already then the science showing that the remaining global carbon budget was approaching something like 500 billion tons of carbon dioxide, which translates to a pathway of cutting emissions by half between 2020 and 2030 to be decisively on a transformation and innovation and dignified, equitable pathway to net zero world economy by 2050 to have a chance of holding the 1.5 degrees Celsius Paris limit. So that was already in 2020. We're now in 2024. We've not made progress. We are still increasing emissions. The global carbon budget is down to 200 billion tons of carbon dioxide, equivalent to 5 years of emissions. This is why the scientific conclusion today is that the only chance to hold 1.5 degrees Celsius at all at our at our hand is to reduce global emissions by 7.5% per year. This is exponential. This means we're in a transformation phase. Speed and scale is the only currency that counts. And it also requires us to really embrace innovation and transformation. In addition, science now shows very clearly that 1.5 degrees Celsius is not a goal. It's not a target. It's a physical limit. It's a planetary boundary. Go beyond it and billions of people across the world lose their chances of dignified human well-being. We know this today. 2023, we touched 1.5 degrees Celsius and had millions of people affected by droughts, floods, fires, heat waves, and human-reinforced storms. But even deeper concern in that if we breach 1.5, multiple tipping points are likely to be crossed, from the Greenland ice sheet to all the tropical coral reef systems in the world, which means a collapse of the life support for hundreds of millions of people. Forest biomes likewise. So the science is very clear today that moreover, that the only way to hold the Paris 1.5 degrees Celsius limit, apart from what I just shared with you in terms of the pace of change, is that even if we are successful in following that pace of oil, coal, and gas phase out, we will still fail, because the only chance of holding 1.5 is what you indicated, Kirsten, which is the resilience of the Earth system, that we need to return to the safe operating space of all the planetary boundaries. It's not enough to phase out fossil fuels by 2050. We need to hold nature's capacity to buffer global warming intact. And unfortunately, we're starting to see signs of losing that resilience. You've probably seen the data, the Brazilian part of the Amazon, the temperate forest in Scandinavia, the temperate forest in Canada, the boreal forest in the Arctic region are showing the first signs of losing resilience. This is very, very deep concern. That is why it's so helpful for the innovation pathways that we have been able to scientifically quantify not only the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit, but also a quantified biodiversity boundary, a boundary for land biomes, a boundary for the ocean, a boundary for the hydrological cycle, all the biosphere boundaries that can help us to keep the health of the planet intact. Does this help us in innovation pathways to close? Yes, I would argue that we have empirical evidence that when we set hard boundaries, it translates to constraints. Constraints is the very mother of innovation and the core of economic value. So setting these boundaries and respecting them within a safe operating space can be the pathway not only to innovation, but also to have a serious discussion of how do we equitably share the remaining ecological space on Earth. And we could go on for a long time to talk of all the opportunities we have, because we know the transformations, the energy transition, the food system transition, from linear to circular material flows, and an urban transformation. And interestingly, in all these four, we have scalable solutions. Back to you, Kirsten. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. Ketan, perhaps you would like to build on your perspective on the same question.
All right. So Ketan Patel, I'm the chair of something called Force for Good. We work on the UN Sustainable Development Goals to understand what does it take to actually level up the world. What are the mass solutions that would have to be rolled out? I'll begin the reflection this way, actually. This year, half the world's population was meant to vote, 70 countries or so. And the people did not really vote for candidates who supported climate change. They voted for skeptics. They voted out incumbents. But climate change was not a feature of that vote. So it's clear that actually there is not the will amongst people to make the changes or sacrifices that might be required to make this big shift. There also is not the policy shift amongst the large governments to actually shift the world towards that. The EU is probably the only region or bloc that has a top-down effort to introduce policies at a scale that might make a difference. But otherwise, climate change is not the #1 candidate on the list of what the citizen feels needs to change to shift the world. There is enough money, certainly, to shift the world. There's something like $450 trillion of money in the financial system. And we broke a record this year with nearly $110 trillion of GDP. I think it was 107. So the money is certainly there, but that money is deployed by politicians and by people to keep the lights on, so to speak, to keep burning the things that we're burning today in the way that we burn it, but not to make this big shift. And I think the biggest challenge, therefore, we face is how do you mobilize the individual to decide that this is the most important thing to do? And how do you do that while still making the sacrifices that might have to be made in the richest parts of the world so that the rest of the world can actually enjoy prosperity and this shift happens? I know Kirsten will get on to talking about solutions that might lead to the flow of funds, but we have an enormous challenge ahead of us. My reading of the IPCC report is that actually we have no chance, based on current policies, of even achieving 2.5 C at all. So our biggest challenge isn't whether we will get to 2.5 C on current policies. It's, is there a way to reverse that trend line? And the net zero since COP26, I think, has receded in terms of the importance, certainly, to the political and financial systems around the world.
Thank you very much. I really want to capture the point of reflection on the fact that we have an understanding of what a carbon budget is. We had an understanding. We have not materially changed our practices to act consequently with that understanding. And we are currently on track actually for 2.4 by 2040 and 3 degrees by the end of this century. That's a very, very, very big curve of exponential change downwards, which is what Johan is referring to. And in fact, 7.5 to 8% of reductions year on year is equivalent to year on year of what happened during COVID. One of the things that I think is deeply concerning in this scenario, and Bernhard, I'm about to come to you, is the question of stability. We can have the best intentions for transformation in the world, but if we have insufficient economic, political stability to exercise any of those best intentions in, as indeed you have just referred to, we have half the world voting in favor of keep the burning going, keep the lights on, keep to the status quo. What do you think it would take for us to retain social and political stability, but nonetheless enable transformation?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kirsten. Very, very important question. It's always a pleasure to speak, and also a challenge to speak after Johan and really come back to this question of stability, particularly given the geopolitical situation that Ketan also referred to. I mean, it's a challenging geopolitical situation, but I'm a pragmatic optimist, and I always try to describe the glass rather half full than half empty. And Ketan, you made this reference to the EU. We are doing a good job in maintaining the course of action. Even we also have challenges among certain governments in Germany and other nations at the moment in the EU. I think stability matters, and the reason why we assembled here this year at COP29 shows that we all understand and really strengthen and want to work for this stability. I think COP29, and Ketan, you referred to the billions to the trillions thing, can be a strong signal to the world that we have stability still, we have still a functioning multilateral order, and that's why we urgently need to make this a success. I was attending some of the meetings last night about the discussions on the agenda, and we know that the opening plenary is starting very soon. And we can only hope that parties will understand this sense of urgency on the one hand that Johan referred to and is brilliantly alluding to, and on the other hand, understanding that we need signals to get this financing resolved. I mean, I'm a COP veteran. We discussed for these things for more than 20 years now, and this is supposed to be the finance COP. So by way of introduction, I'm leading our sustainability practice outside the audit practice at Deloitte globally. And if I look at my global clients, finance is the next big issue that we have to solve. And we have to get from the billions to the trillions within much needed investment. And to get investment in the right places, particularly in the global south, stability is key. So signals like a functioning multilateral order that encourage investors to do the right thing, give signals for stability also in the financial system, in the economic environment, are crucial. And I really hope that my pragmatic optimism works in the next 2 weeks.
So do I. Let's make that an invitation to all of us. I want to come back to the question of urgency and who holds what and who has a concern over climate and who is more worried about the short term. But let me come to you, Sujatha. In particular, you are speaking from a place of investment. What do you think it will take to mobilize the investments that we need? I mean, particular investment in more systemic ways, investment that is actually leading to transformation, not simply substitution of individual issues.
Thank you. I'm Sujatha. I represent Invest India, the National Investment Promotion Agency from India. So collectively, the challenges of mobilizing funds, or even it's not being driven top down. Some of the points I could resonate, and we see it on the ground as well. The mandate we see is mobilizing investments into the country. Now the changing trend or climate investments are accelerating foreign investments into any of the countries we are talking about. But developing countries like India, though when we see on a global scale, the investments into climate and climate tech and climate clean economy projects are on the rise. But developing economies and low LDC countries are still receiving a very, very minimal share of the whole pie. It is still going to the developed nation, mainly because they are more investable and they are backed by most of the advanced tech, investment components. So it's very easy and it's low hanging fruit for investors and for people who are committed to climate change to show it on their books that, yes, we have achieved what we have set out to. But the real challenge is in terms of developing countries where most of the population lies. For example, India is home to almost 1/6 of the world population. We have just started growing. We are having a lot of economic aspiration in terms of growing our GDP from the current 3.7 trillion to almost 7 trillion by end of this decade, that is 2030. So that means the average energy which each of us are going to consume back home is going to be almost doubling or tripling. Our export targets are increasing because we need to feed into our GDP growth. So right now, our share of manufacturing or industrial output to export is only, say, less than 20%. We want to make it 35%. Right? So we are going all out for Make in India, Make for the World. So what does all mean? That it should also be a responsible transition. And that is where we see that there is a great need for financing. But the challenge we also see is, though many of the conversations or many of the narratives says that everyone, all the countries which are global north or developed countries should support in just transition. But where we see the lack is, one is technology. When we need to transition, the technology transfer is still not very easy. Taxonomy is again a huge challenge when we are talking about investments. Technical assistance, and even most of the time blended finance is also a myth for countries like us. Blended finance is like 0% NPA, 0% risk, right? So these are some of the challenges we are facing, but we are all, again, not all is lost. We are trying to work around. We are working with collaboration is the way forward. So that's what we are doing as.
So it's an interesting question, this imbalance between the volume of the trillions going effectively to the global majority, even though in principle often that is talked about, and the reality of perceived as not being investable. Indeed, one of the other challenges that I want to make sure we don't forget is that we have IPCC scenarios, not one of which assumes that the global majority will develop in the way in which the global north has. And once that changes, as India makes itself fit for the world, we have a totally changed scenario. I would like to come to the question of unlocking transformation at different levels and the actions, Ketan, you referred to, how do we mobilize individuals? One of the elements in Europe, for example, that we see makes a difference is multi-level governance and multi-level action. Julien, could I ask you, you are leading one of the most fascinating transboundary initiatives. What is your learning about how multi-level action would enable and can enable something more transformative, bottom up as well as top down?
All right, thank you for the question and giving me the opportunity to share experience of OMVS, which is Organisation pour la mise en valeur du fleuve Sénégal, Senegal River Basin Organization, owned by 4 states, Senegal, Mali, Guinea, and Mauritania. So I think my intervention will be somehow positive about what is real working on this cooperation. So I'm very delighted to speak here on behalf of the High Commissioner of the Organisation pour la mise en valeur du fleuve Sénégal, who for some reason beyond his control were not able to be present at this COP, but I know that his mind and his spirit is with us. So I would also like to really thank Mr. Choi and the organization for providing us this opportunity to share our innovative initiative in the field of climate change adaptation. So our region, particular vulnerability to climate change, our organization is made adaptation for a strategic priority, placing innovation at the heart of our actions. Since its creation now more than 50 years back, OMVS has developed unique governance mechanism, fostering cooperation, solidarity among member states for integrated management of the Senegal River Basin water resources. Our development projects, such as multi-purpose dams, during the introduction, you said that I was the chairperson of the company SOGEM, which is a company managing the multi-purpose dam of OMVS. So our development projects are designed to regulate the river flow and mitigate the impact of extreme climate events such as flood and drought, while supporting the energy, agricultural, and domestic need of our population. To be more concrete, as I speak today, the Senegal River Basin is experiencing one of these upheaval phenomenon due to exceptional rainfall this season. The water level of the Senegal River in recent days at Patel are at the highest record in these last 50 years. They exceed those of 1999 and 2003, when flood caused significant damage in our region. So what was our reaction as a multi-state organization? We work very closely with member states to coordinate, and we have activated our early warning system, and our dams of Manantali in Mali and Jama in the north of Senegal are being operated to mitigate the impact of those floods. So every day, since this phenomenon started, our experts meet with those of the member state to share data and anticipate the action to be taken. A team of hydrologists who are very brave from OMVS and our member state are working together each and every day to refine flow focus, helping our state prepare the arrival of flow. So in this anticipation, I think is a concrete proof, if any were still need, that in the face of the alarming reality of climate change, cross-border cooperation as embodied by OMVS is more than necessary, and is more necessary than ever to build resilience against major disruption. Also, we have recently adopted some innovative approach to strengthen our resilience, notably a sustainable agricultural program and ecosystem restoration that project the basin protect the basin biodiversity. OMVS will also integrate digital technology for real-time hydrological monitoring, improving our ability to anticipate and respond to extreme climate events. So coming back to the question, I think this way of addressing such challenges around climate change, using cooperation, using collaboration in a very diplomatic and geopolitical context. So it's helped to really face this climate change. And we, as OMVS, use this example to show that it is possible also to be working together during those main challenges.
Thank you very much, Julien. So that's interesting. And Johan, I'm just anticipating that I will come back to you in a second. Here we have a week last week in which a very significant majority in the US, at least, chose not to focus on the solutions and opportunity side of climate. Ketan, you're referring to more than half of the population globally, reiterating that same choice, not perceiving the opportunity relationship between massive transformation of the human design for life and prosperity, well-being, sustainability over the long term. So let's come to innovation as one of the possibilities where indeed we can ground working together, partnership, the marriage of prosperity, sustainability, and transformation, not as alternatives, but indeed as deeply linked. Johan, what role do you see for innovation in addressing root cause issues? In particular, you referred to the absolute profound necessity of understanding the relationship between climate and biodiversity, and particularly the relationship between, and just checking, Johan, are you able to come back onto the screen? Can you bring Johan Rockström back on so we can see him?
And I hear you very well, Kirsten.
Perfect. And particularly this question of how do you not make addressing climate change and emissions and addressing biodiversity collapse alternatives, but deeply interlinked? What role do you see innovation playing in that?
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. So to start with, we have to recognize the fact that the only way to have a safe landing for climate and therefore for humanity on planet Earth is through innovation and transformation, that there is no more any space for linear incremental development. However positive that is, it will simply not deliver. And that is really important. We're talking about exponentials now. We're talking about doubling positive tipping point trajectories within the next 10, 20 years to have any chance. We're simply running out of time so fast. So answer to your question is we have no choice. We have to make innovation work. Secondly, I just want to emphasize that, and I think you say that in your question already, innovation comes in many colors. It's certainly not only technology. What I shared with you of having a global economy that operates within scientifically defined boundaries or targets is in itself an innovation. It's an institutional innovation. We've never done that before. We've experimented on climate. Now we need to do it for the entire Earth system. And that can be operationalized, and it's an innovation challenge in its own right. Third, I think it's really important to recognize that we are already on exponential curves. We are on exponential curves on renewable energy, on solar voltaics, on wind farms. It outcompetes coal-generated electricity on all markets on the entire planet, even without subsidies, despite the fact that we're subsidizing fossil fuel-based energy systems with $7 trillion per year, almost 10% of the global economy. Renewable energy systems are still growing exponentially. We see it in the food system. We have innovations that can be scaled for sustainable, healthy food systems that can capture carbon instead of release carbon. We have those innovations. That's quite interesting that it's not fantasy anymore to embark on an exponential innovation pathway. The challenge is your point about half of the world still electing, let's say, yesterday's global development model. How can that be? Well, it's not so surprising. We know we are in a big systems transformation globally. We are in the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era. And we know that in all big system transformations, you have a gauntlet. There is a bumpy, turbulent ride when you replace one system with another system. There are winners and losers, there are vested interest, and there are many who feel very concerned and nervous in that transition. So how to handle that? Well, we have to make it easy for people to step on board. And the only way to make it easy for people to step on board is that they perceive that the new pathway is not going to hurt them. And I think that is where we failed. We often talk about the yellow vests in Paris, for example. Well, that was not a climate protest at all. They did not protest against climate action. They protest against the lack of money in their wallets. And we know how to do social dividend systems to protect to help in the innovation pathway. So basically, what I'm saying is we need political leadership to set not only the boundary conditions for science-based targets, the planetary boundaries, the space to innovate within, but also the financial flows to subsidize in the transition phase to make it reasonable for the big masses of citizens to join the journey, because we can scale innovations, but we have to make it affordable.
Thank you very much. We can scale innovation, we have to make it affordable, and we need exponential change. Ketan, what can you tell us about positive tipping points that would channel investment in exponential ways towards things where people perceive a benefit?
So, you know, a part of our challenge is that the US market does so well, there is almost no case to put money anywhere else. It doesn't really matter whether things go well or not in the world. The US market seemed like a safe bet. And it seems like you can, in some years, make as much as 30 or 40% just backing the US market, the equities market. So why would anyone go anywhere else and take risk? And that is our biggest challenge. When one market so systematically outcompetes every single market in the world. And the reason it does is because the US is probably the only country that has a scaled system of enterprise that's self-reinforcing, where it generates the capital, it generates the innovation in its colleges and laboratories. It transfers that to the private sector, which monetizes it on a global basis in every place where they want to do business. No one else has matched that. At the height of the British Empire, they probably had something similar. But today, it's just the US that has managed to do that at the scale that it does. So the question for us is, if the money's to go anywhere else, where it needs to go, because the financial system is really designed to serve about a third of humanity. 2/3 of humanity live in the global south or in pockets inside rich countries and are not the target of the financial system. So if it is to serve everybody else, what has to change? What is that block you remove and the money flows? Having studied it quite deeply as an investor, so my primary role is as an investor taking money from the richer countries and deploying it in developing markets. What I find is the risk is enormous deploying that money. People say we've misunderstood the risk, it's not that much. It's huge compared to just putting the equities market in the US, and that's what counts. So what has to change? The thing that has to change is the policy barriers that change the risk equation for someone to put money into a market. So what are those specifically? They're things like, if I put the money in, can I take it back out and there's no currency control? If I put the money in, will there be no bureaucracy that gets in the way of the flow of that money? And when I choose to take it out, will it be liquid? Because there are enough other people who want to take my investment. That does not exist in most countries already. If I put money in, is there an infrastructure on which I could build something? And most countries, of course, they're poor. They don't have the infrastructure. And that's what they actually need the investment for, the infrastructure. Then the question becomes, is the pool of labor big enough that's trained to actually do it? And as you keep probing these questions, you find too often the answer is no. And it's no because if you study the SDGs at the level of the underlying indicators, what you find is they were designed for implementation of policy. Someone had to implement the policy almost first, so that a country had the right policies, rules and laws, and that investment could flow. And what we're asking of the financial world, of investors who manage $450 trillion, is that they take that money and they take a risk which they're not authorized to take by their customers. Their customers, 2/3 of the money of the world comes from the individual. They put it into the financial system for pensions, insurance policies, savings products, to pay for school fees and so on. They do not want it going anywhere else. They're so clear. In fact, laws are designed, regulations designed to prevent that money flowing. The only way we change that equation is if we turn whole continents, and it can't be smaller given the level of change we face, whole continents into markets. And that requires us to redesign the laws and policies and regulations of whole continents. The African Union would be the most powerful player in doing that, perhaps in Africa. India is going through that process now, but it needs to go even faster despite the level of change you've seen. And so this is our challenge. They need to be markets with very low risk, real risk. So an investor says, instead of earning 15 to 30%, which I could do with my eyes closed in the US market, I will instead choose to take a risk because I believe it's the right thing to do. That I believe it's the right thing to do is not what last week's election told us is going to happen. And so we have this serious challenge, which actually the IPCC foresaw this and outlined 5 scenarios, which I think you're referring to, Kirsten, the SSPs. One of them was to go green, but that required unity, which we don't have. The 5th one, the most extreme of them, was to go for broke with oil and gas, assuming that if we spend all our money on going for oil and gas and earning the dividends of that, we will somehow keep up innovation at such a pace that we will find the solutions to all the pollution. That's such a big risk, it's betting the whole planet. And I think last week we decided to bet the planet. And the rest of us don't have a choice. It was an American vote to bet the planet, I think.
Let's widen out or turn around the question of investing in what, by whom, for whom, on behalf of whom. One of the interesting questions of the underlying backbone of the economy sitting with sovereign wealth, institutional capital and pensions is they have a fiduciary duty indeed. And it's an interesting extension or question around how one extends that fiduciary duty to require a percentage of assets under management now to finance a stabilized transition faster rather than wait and assume someone else will do it for you.
So, can I give a quick answer? A quick answer would be the EU is probably the only place in the world that seems to have a vision of a world where we have sustainability. It's built into law that requires innovation to be sourced and deployed. The Chinese understand that very well, and China is copying its regulation and policy very much off the EU. And if you had to look and step right above it, you could see the EU and China with very complementary policies. India is a rising nation, somehow does have the vision that it will grow clean. If India chooses not to grow clean, then actually the world will never achieve net zero or the SDGs. So strategically for the world, the growth of India probably matters more than any other region in the world, and it has to be clean. And to do that, India is a market actually, sufficiently for us to invest, experiment, and transfer to the rest of the world.
No pressure, Siddhartha. May I come quickly to you, Bernhard? I see that you are looking like you would love to comment and build on this.
I mean, that was excellent, really. Thank you very much for the strong pledge. I mean, I can understand this as a pledge to both relevant stakeholders here, like MDBs and others, like private banks and investors, like private equity houses, and to the parties to come to a deal. I mean, this is a finance COP. We discussed CNCQG, right? We all know how the structure could look like. And your pledge was a strong pledge to really focus on making really the effort that is needed to lower the cost of capitals, to find innovative ways of bringing the capital into the green, as I said, transformation of the global south that you also alluded to. Just one comment. Our calculations, it doesn't matter if that's 5 trillion or 7 trillion, which the energy transformation costs us yearly, depending on IEA or Deloitte, it doesn't matter. The question is, how do we get to really lower the cost of capital? That will lower also the investment that is needed for this. And I think this is a core question, and this is the 2 weeks that the world community focuses on. And I know what happened the last 2 weeks, not only, by the way, on this side of the Atlantic, but there were moments in this international multilateral process where those moments were moments of truth, and the rest of the multilateral community came together and was strengthened. And I hope that could be a moment like this.
And of course, what drives the cost of capital is our definition of value. So indeed, one of the real challenges for these 2 weeks is what are we assuming is actually the source of value? Can I finish just a couple of reflections from Julien and from you, Sajata? Masamba opened this session with a reflection on the fact that we need to weave together the hard, the soft elements, make sure that what we are fundamentally looking at is integration of elements so that we understand how to get the kind of dynamics of change that Johan, Ketan, and my apologies, Bernhard, you are all referring to. If I channel the people that I know of a generational difference, intergenerational tensions, they would be outraged to think or to hear stated that more than half the population simply doesn't care. The sense of anger and fear and the race against despair is enormous. What do you see from the work that both of you are doing that gives you hope that individuals can understand and will understand urgency and opportunity in the same breath and seek to act both individually and institutionally?
Should I go first? Okay. So from the work, from the conversation we are having here, like people though believe climate change is true and are facing it every day, but still when we are choosing our electorates, we don't consider that to be the main agenda. One of the reasons which when we are working with the stakeholders locally, climate change, though last 1 year, at least I live in Delhi, so it is now synonymous with pollution. So climate change is experienced by each and every citizen, but as long as it is not linked to an economic, transition, climate change is not making sense to anybody. So I can say for all I want that climate change is important, and everyone, if you go out on the streets and ask every citizen you meet, everyone would say that they are impacted by climate change. But why are they not transitioning into action when they have to really have the power to change? That's mainly because probably climate change is still looking at it's still becoming an elitist problem in terms of economic opportunities for the lowest or the bottom of the pyramid. So innovations, we believe, is very, very critical. Innovation to solutions of climate change, innovation to unlocking economic opportunities, and to leave out the fear of job loss. Fear out the loss of economic opportunity is very, very critical when we are talking about taking everyone in the community along with the main agenda or a critical agenda, I would say, climate change. So some of these solutions, what we are looking at when we are implementing investable opportunity is, one is, as you know, that India is home to many states, almost 26 states and around 8 union territories. So each of the states, like for example, when we are talking about how do we take the economic aspiration of the state along with their climate agenda, each of them are committed to a net zero transition similar to what India has committed as net zero 2070. So every state has committed to the net zero. Every state has their economic aspiration also. So there is a document which is now being built because India is looking at becoming a developed economy by 2047. Similarly, each of the state players, they have their own economic aspiration. The third one is the local reality. What is my skill set? What is my current economy is dependent on? Is it like 80% dependent on coal economy? Then how do I do just transition? Or am I chasing towards solar instead of like, I don't have a potential, but because everybody is pitching a solar project, should I go behind a solar project? So these are some of the technical assistance which we see is lacking on the ground level, even within the policymakers. Though everyone is now, climate change is becoming a main agenda talking, but not into action. But when we provide the right amount of technical assistance, collaboration, even multilateral development banks or DFIs, when they are coming and talking, most of the time what we see is when they engage with state or the ground level stakeholders, the language is like, okay, we will tell you how to manage climate change. I think that narrative should change. So as long as when we follow in spirit the true collaborative sense and also in action, I think definitely every last man in the planet would want to be part of this, tackling climate change and wanting to grow with it.
Thank you very much. Julien, a short last word.
Thank you. For us, I think here we are going from a more institutional to more communities level. And organizations like OMVS, which are managing cross-boundary resources, is going more and more in the community level, showing actions and even engaging those community throughout those policy making. I think there is a concept that I like to use as an example when talking to people from my generation, because I might be chairperson of this big company, but I'm still a young man, right? So the concept that I'm using to speak with people from my generation is this prospective innovation for the next year, because today we are maybe seeing and facing some challenges of our moment, but our generation should be able to just look in the future and see what are the challenges that are coming. It's true that we need to address those from this moment, that those we are facing, but while addressing them, are we sustainable? Are we looking farther than we can? So organization like OMVS, to come back to our context, are implementing actually some program called integration of peoples, because we have achieved a kind of state integration with our different government, but we need to create a model where our communities feel integrated around these resources. Our conviction is that innovation, in all its form, technological, political, financial, social, is essential to addressing the global challenge. So when we go beyond that, we know that we all have a role to play in building a prosperous and resilient future. So when basic needs are met in respect of our environment, and as I said, of our future generation. So to conclude, I know that you're taking back the flow. I'm delighted that this session brings together different stakeholder, financial, state, young associations, to inspire and foster ambitious and transformative solution. I do believe that by joining forces, we can contribute to a greener, more resilient, more equitable future for all. So that is a kind of advocacy that we need to hold for this generation, for our challenges of today, but also looking in the future. And we are, as I said at the beginning, very positive, because there are some models like the OMVS models that is working. Thank you.
Perhaps we can remember that if you want to nurture a tree, you need to water its roots, not its flowers. Okay, thank you very much, all of you. Thank you again to Masamba for hosting this opening session. And thank you, Johan, online. I wish you a good day for the rest of the day.
Thank you, Kirsten. So thanks to all of you who have come and participated in this session. We'll be starting our next session at 12 p.m. in the same room. So see you at 12.